Who are you, Simone?
Who am I for real? Okay, so that's a very complicated question because I struggle with that question most days. I don't really know. But I can tell you a bit of my background. And so I've been around for 51 years, which is very long. So I'll just talk a little bit about my formative years and my very young years. I was born in South Africa, and I grew up in South Africa from quite a traditional Jewish family, which I think is normal in South Africa. So we would have Shabbat every Friday night and go to the synagogue every Friday night, but we weren't Shomrei Shabbos. But my family was friendly with all the Rabbonim and all, and we were very traditional. My Zayda was actually a rabbi from Lithuania.
Zayda was grandfather, just translating for those of us that aren't Jewish in the group. Zayda was grandfather.
And also Shomrei Shabbos means Sabbath observant.
Yeah, my grandparents on my father's side were very religious and only spoke Yiddish. And my grandparents on my mom's side weren't Jewish at all. So my mother converted, which caused a little bit of friction, but not too much, because when I knew her, she was the most Yiddish mama you'd ever meet. I was very lucky because my parents were very respectful and very loving. So we had domestic help in the house, but they lived in the house with their whole family. So there was no separating of families, and there was a lot of respect. We knew, well, we still know them. They're still part of our family, and very, it was a very loving relationship. There was definitely no maltreatment or anything like that. But I knew very young that there was a problem. There was a swimming pool built in Norwood called Patterson Park, and my parents decided to take all the children that were living in our house to this new swimming pool, which turned out to be an absolute disaster, because we arrived there and everyone started throwing stones at us, and it was just the most horrific. I must have been about 9 or 10, and it was horrific. And my mother had explained to me, well, she explained to me separately from the other kids, because she didn't want to upset anybody, that the reason they were throwing stones at us was because we were there with black children and they weren't allowed to be there. So I knew then that there was something seriously wrong with the society I was living in. And then I went to visit a crazy relative who asked me if I would help the gardener make some tea. So I thought, that's really strange. Like, he's a grown man. Why would he need my help to make tea? And she said, I must throw the sugar from the sugar bowl into his cup and not let him touch the cup. And I could see the pain in this man's eyes, and I gave him the sugar bowl, and she never spoke to me again. This woman who lost her temper and went absolutely mental. And I discussed it with my parents, and my parents always had friends of every color, and it just, I don't know. It was very traumatic and formed, I think, who I am today. So I'm very grateful that I can be a loving person, and that I can respect and love everybody. Doesn't matter where they come from, their socioeconomic background, the color of their skin. I realized from a very early age that what makes a person is what's inside their soul and not what's outside. And I think that's all. I mean, today I'm an artist, and my subject matter is mainly Kabbalistic subject matter, and I do a lot of things with babies and war children and stuff like that. At the moment, I'm doing a collaboration with some African women refugees that are living in Israel. And that's all about me for today. I hope that's enough. I don't know.
Wow.
That's lovely. What do you attribute to your parents' openness to all sorts of people? How did you luck out with such parents?
I think, well, my dad was, he was a businessman and he was a pharmacist, and I think he was dealing with all kinds of people all the time. So we would go to dinner with all different people we would often go into like Lenasia and just outside Soweto and go to different people's homes for dinner, and we would just, I guess, he just never saw people with color, which is quite interesting because, I mean, historically he's been blamed for a lot of things, but he I don't know. And I guess my mom was just the most loving woman that you could possibly meet. She just loved everyone, and everyone loved her in return. So,
how old are you? How old were you when this sugar bowl thing happened?
I don't remember, but I was young. I was probably about 11. Maybe, yeah, must have been about 11.
Yeah.
It was very traumatic. It was very, very traumatic. She was not a very nice lady. Yeah. But
some good came out of it in the end. Yes, Anita wants to ask a question or comment.
Yeah, because I love the sugar bowl story. I mean, initially I just thought, God, that's ridiculously funny that she was going to throw the sugar. I thought it was going to be a funny story, but clearly not. And so I think it's your understanding, obviously, maybe because of where you were, you realized that it was not just a joke, that it was actually, she was being serious about it. And I love the way they described how you could see in the face of the man, the gentleman, that he was, expecting the worst, and he must have really loved you for what you did. I mean, you must have experienced some connection there, I imagine.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I just remember I was small, and it's a very long time ago, but I just remember that it's something that I've never forgotten. I've never forgotten the look in that man's eyes. And I think when there was a bonding, he was obviously, we were both getting yelled at. And so there was kind of like, we had almost had like a common enemy, if you'd like. Yeah, it was, I couldn't believe that someone could treat another human being like that. I just didn't sit right. I mean, as a child, I couldn't understand it. I'd never seen anything like that before. I did see, the kids throwing stones at us at the swimming pool, and that also didn't make any sense. But it wasn't like a one-on-one thing. It was.
Did you not feel a connection with this man? I'm thinking, I mean, there must have been a connection between you.
Like I said,
act of kindness that you showed.
Well, there was definitely like a kind of an exchange of something. It was anyway. It was a very long time ago, and if nothing else came of it, certainly a love, a deep love of humanity.
Anita and Simone, you could
a lot of sugar bowls.
Oh.
What? Sorry.
A lot came of it because Simone just knows how to give out those sugar bowls. You're an expert, Simi, at the sugar bowls.
I'm also thinking that maybe Anita and Simon can collaborate on some art project together.
Could be interesting.
Yeah, the two of you needs to connect.
But I'm already jealous. I would very much like to have a one-on-one with you, Simon, to talk about Kabbalah and art. I have, over the past 5 to 10 years, jumped into the sea of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. And I've jumped into that sea of oneness, that sea of love. And I'd love, I suppose loving classroom and loving world is an expression of, in one way, but the world of art, even the humanity being, it's like a reasonable attempt to get this picture up there of the humanity being, but there's deeper levels of oneness I'd love to express through the medium of art. So maybe you'd be interested in talking about ideas. And
yeah, I'd love to have that. Sure.
Fantastic. I'm so excited. Life is worth living, eh? Gosh, meeting all these fantastic people. Okay. I also, if I may, I'll share with what in many circles, you triggered a story that I wasn't going to share this week, but I guess I'd like to share it because it triggered something you said about the Sugar Bowl story, and your parents and everything triggered a story which I did share with Nomi and Reuben. Sorry for being repetitive, but and it's also, I can see this, for me it's so pure, but other people may say it's wrong and I'm wrong, and they would criticize me for it, and so you can think what you think about this story. But it just so happens that recently, because we have this really exciting program in Gaza starting, and hopefully in 5 schools, please God, if it works out, and we've got 5 teachers, 5 trainers teaching, because Tulani trained these 5 trainers, and 2 mega trainers above them are working with 5 schools, 1 from UNRWA, 2 public schools, 1 private school, 2 private schools, and it's taking off, and they're working with newspapers. It's like quite something. It's amazing. And they're doing the fundraising for it, which is fantastic, and so on. So one of the things that happened, because we have connections now in that world, there's a very large sum of money that maybe the United, and it may not happen, so, you know, don't say you failed, you don't get it type of thing, but it could be a very large money to bring Loving Classroom to the Middle East Arab world, coming from the United Arab Emirates. And one of the people that we're in contact with is very close to members of the Ministry of Happiness from the United Arab Emirates. And I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, they've got a Ministry of Happiness and Israel doesn't. We have what to learn from the United Arab Emirates. Now, maybe 50% of that Ministry of Happiness is political or this and that, but there's another 50% like, wow, that's amazing that they even have the guts to set up a Ministry of Happiness. And I suddenly felt extremely happy that it's not always, and if I'm speaking to Anita and Tulani, if you're in the Jewish world, it's like the Jews did this, the Jews did that, and there's this Jewish pride, but I also take pride in every member of humanity and their achievements. And it's as if Ishmael, who represents one character, and his brother Isaac, they were sort of like somewhat fighting each other in the Bible story, and that's Isaac, and that was a paradigm for history, and suddenly here it's important for me. I realized that every nation in the world has something to offer, light, their own something to offer, and I suddenly took great pleasure, and it's not always us coming up with the ideas. They've got a beautiful ministry of happiness, and we should all be learning from the United Arab Emirates on this idea of a Ministry of Happiness. That idea of craving the dignity of every nation in the world and craving the dignity of every human being means I want to see your light, and I want that light to be recognized, and your contribution to the humanity being. And when you were talking about your parents and that story, it just made me feel like how much I want every member of South Africa and the world. I just want everybody to be loved for the light that they are. That's something that you strengthened in me. And so that's a little follow-up story. Okay.
Can I,
Yes.
one quick
Can I
question?
ask something?
Yes. First of all, Joyce, and then Tulani. You were beaten by Joyce by 1/4 of a second, Tulani. There, have to wait.
No problem. Ladies, I'm a gentleman. Ladies first. It's still Ladies' Month in South
Yeah,
Africa. It's
sorry,
Women's
Tulani, age before beauty.
Month.
In South Africa, what age group are you teaching Loving Classroom? And in Gaza, what age group?
I'll South Africa first, Tulani.
Okay, in South Africa, we are currently in high school, meaning from age 13 to 18. That's the age group. But next year, we want to pilot 1 or 2 schools of the primary school version, which was strongly recommended by the evaluator from the Department of Education, because one of the things that she said was that there is a phrase that we use in South Africa. I'll say it in Zulu and I'll explain it in English. We say "Ligotshwa lisemanzi," meaning that something that you learned while you are still very young, it's very it's close to it's very hard to unlearn that. So if kids can learn Loving Classroom at a very early age, then it will be very difficult for them to unlearn it while they are old. And while we're doing a wonderful job with high schools, it's very difficult to teach kids at that age new ways of behavior.
Okay, thank you.
And in Gaza, I believe we're doing 6th and 7th grade schools at this point. It's also the same sort of age group, the youngest of the oldest group. And once that takes on, then again, they're following the South African model in about a year or two. They have a 3-year plan at this point, and they'll go, like in a year or two down the road, they're going to start with the primary school age, because there's a product for that.
Can I ask Tulani a question?
Yeah. Yes.
We're about to launch Loving Classroom in Israel, and we are focusing on 7th grade. However, you just said that maybe we should start with younger children. Which way would you go?
I don't know how the school system in Israel works. For us here in South Africa, 7th grade is the last grade before you go to high school. So we've got primary school and high school. So 7th grade is the last grade, and then grade 8 is the first grade in high school. I would say go for it. Go for the 7th grade. That in that way, it will be a great preparation for them when they go to high school, if your school system is the same as ours. So I would say grade 7 is a perfect age to start.
Okay.
And historically speaking, the reason why and there were a couple of reasons, but the reason why I ended up starting with the end, as it were, the higher levels, was because I wanted to know where the program is going to. Once we knew where the program is going to, we could then develop the younger version, because we understood where it's going to. That the other way around, you could be developing things, but you're not quite sure where it's going to. I felt uneasy not knowing the goal. That's why it was that way round. But now that they're both here, you can start with both if you wish as well. Okay, so we now come to the second part of this thing, which is...
Sorry, David, I wanted to ask a question to Simone.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Simone, are you in any way related to the Kroc brothers?
I am. A.B. Kroc was my father, and Solly Kroc, my uncle.
Oh, okay. I am it's unrelated to this, but I am a supporter of Mamelodi Sundowns, and they used to own Sundowns at one stage.
That's correct. And now it belongs to Patrice, and my father and Patrice were best friends.
Oh, nice one.
So I'm so glad you're a supporter of Sundowns.
So am
Sky
I.
is
I
the
don't know who
limit.
you're supporting, but I'm joining in.
The sky is the limit.
Sky's the limit.
Wow. Yeah, wow. Wow. Yes, okay. So we wanted to go through maybe each of, I'm going to share a screen now of the screen there, which is the respect page. So we sort of like finished the respect section, and I've got all these pictures on the side of the screen. Move them there. So respect, summary and evaluation. We've completed the foundation course for Virtue 1, respect. Well done. Finish off with a 4H summary and interim evaluation. So respect, our definition of respect, and of course there's a million definitions. So we have a high regard for ourselves, people of diverse backgrounds, and property. So maybe we can go around. Did you learn anything from this section on respect? What did you learn? And if so, what did you learn from this section on respect? If we can go around and you can, I'd like to know if we learned anything. I know I did most of the talking and there were videos and it wasn't done for teachers as if we were actually teaching a class, so we rushed through it. Have you learned anything of any use? Please share.
Maybe you've forgotten some of the things that went in the previous.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've forgotten some of them.
Yeah.
Anything come to mind?
I learned that every single person has their own special quality that they can give to the world, and we might not know what that quality is when we look at that person, and it doesn't have to be a huge big thing, but every single person can make a difference by their quality, and we have to respect that.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm just wondering, other people, did you learn anything? I have to, for me, it's
Anita,
important. Anita, Anita, yes, Anita, please, yes.
I think I love the fact that we were asked to sort of look at virtues, and it's interesting to see and listen to virtues and see how each of us perceive them and what is more important to each other, and not that it's not important as a whole, but I love the idea of looking at the virtues.
Thank you. You know, I'm going to put little people on a little bit of a spot here.
Anita, can I just ask you, when you say the virtues, which virtue are you talking about? The 8 virtues on the curriculum, or are you talking about anything like your five top family virtues?
Yeah, I was talking about the virtues we were asked to sort of look at into ourselves and feel into what were more important to us or the people that we're sort of connected with on a daily basis.
Reuven, have you learned anything from this series? I know you haven't been here all of the meetings, and I'm putting you on the spot.
It's a bit like being on Zoom. No, I have learned something, and I think I know what it is. When we're on Zoom, so we see the faces, and everybody has a different face, but that's as far as it goes. When you start thinking from the aspect of respect, it's almost like you're walking around the person and almost getting into their mind, and suddenly this person opens up and they're really not what they seem, but there's all these hidden qualities that you didn't know about, which teaches me that when I see somebody or meet somebody for the first time, it doesn't mean that I know them. They're just another person. But when you get to know somebody, you suddenly realize who they are. And consequently, when I do meet people in the future, I will reserve judgment and give it time to see what these people really are and what their qualities are and what I can learn from them. So, yes, I have learned something.
Wow, thank you. I'm also amazed at, I just want to ask to learn something. That was such a beautiful response. Why was it that you didn't volunteer it and I had to pick on you to say, Reuven, do you have anything to say? What was it in the Zoom environment that needed me to prompt you to say the most beautiful, inspiring words?
Because I've had already a couple of hours of David Geffen Zoom time today. And,
Okay. Fair enough. I don't want to pick on anybody else,
I'll go.
but is there any? Yes, Joyce, what did you learn?
So based on what Ruben said, and even referring to myself, I'm always believe, unfortunately, people judge a book by its cover in this world. And I think what everyone needs to start is you look at somebody with respect no matter what until you get to know them. And then if you choose not to respect them, that's one thing. But you need to start with respect for everybody and then kind of work backwards. And I kind of saw that in the learning also, that you need to go in, you should go in with respect and then figure out the rest and give people a chance.
Fantastic. I'd like to just add, we haven't got there to chapter 4 of kindness or 3 of listening, but painful behavior comes from people in pain. I wager that if you factor that in, all the negativity just comes from pain. And if we remember that pain, we'll understand that the respect, the light that's there is the primary source of that person's essence, even though their behavior has been taken over by anger and painful behavior. Their essence is light. Everybody. I've never met personally, if I remember that, I've never met a person whose essence isn't a beautiful light. We mess up and get uptight. It's so easy to forget when people get uptight of their beautiful essence, but I think we need to remember that painful behavior comes from people in pain, and then always remember that respect. I think if we do that, then we will never lose. We never need to judge them.
Yeah.
but what happens when the first meeting with the person is going to a swimming pool and being stoned because of the company you are keeping? Do you immediately say, oh, that person's in pain, I have to respect him?
I think they're just misguided.
What's that? Who's
misguided, especially? I think people are often misguided, and it starts at a very young age. So people are taught, because nobody is born hating anybody else. I think people are taught that hatred, and that's what Loving Classroom is, why it's so important, because you can hopefully unlearn that hatred and teach people to love other people.
And that's why it's important to do it younger as well, to start teaching the younger years so that it goes with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think everything we learn and a lot of what we become is something we're taught at a young age, either from what we see, what we hear. It's unfortunate, and then it just goes on through life, even if you don't believe it. But it's how you've been programmed from a young age. And again, I fall in that category. So we just have to unlearn that. So I don't think it's sadness in a lot of people, maybe in some, but I think it's, what's the word? Just like what Simone said, they were misguided and mistaught at a young age.
I'd like to point something out. As we go through the other virtues, and there's exercises and lessons to learn, especially for the kids, we're not excusing bad behavior. We're not saying, okay, somebody committed knife crime, why did they commit it? You know, somebody's into drugs, why are they into drugs? Or they're selling drugs, or dealing slave trade, all the ills of society. We're not turning around and saying, oh, we have to forgive all those people. You know, somebody just like threw a bomb for whatever reason, they're feeling disgruntled about something, and they may be like justified in their disgruntled, but like, this is not the way you deal with it. We're not saying that the force of the law should not be instituted in cases of violence, of people performing criminal acts. All we're saying is that the person behind that, what led them to that? What led them? And painful behavior comes from people in pain. And so we're trying to go behind a little bit like Simon said, if they were like misguided in some way, or they grew up in amongst the violence. So that's what they know, and life is unfair, and the only way that you get to survive is by being violent yourself. And so we learn to understand why is it that somebody did that, and feel respect for their inner soul, even if we don't respect their actions, their antisocial actions. But clearly, if you teach kids from an early age to respect somebody else, then there won't be knife crimes, there won't be terrorism, there won't be, sexual abuse, there won't be all these things, because, hey, this other person that I'm just looking at now, that I I like doing something awful against, but they're a person, they're a human being. They've got they've got their own history and their own, they might be annoying, or I might dislike them for some reason or other, but I've got to, oh, wait a minute, I understand, they're going through a hard time themselves. Maybe I should find out, what is it that they're going through that I can help them with, and just make the whole atmosphere more human.
And that's healing as well.
Can I say something as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
On that issue, what Ruben was asking, I'll relate a story. In South Africa now, we have a very serious challenge of gender-based violence. We have many women being killed by men, many women being abused by men. Statistics shows that South Africa is actually counted in terms of gender-based violence, is counted the same as countries that are at war, because every 2 minutes a woman it's either raped, abused, or killed in South Africa. And what everyone has been doing for years was that they have been empowering women, which is good, to deal with the violence that they are faced with from men. But it has not been effective, because the people that are perpetrating this violence, nothing has been done to them. Now there is a little bit of a shift in terms of the approach of dealing with gender-based violence, because they've realized through studies that most of the men that are doing this, I don't know how to even explain it, these crimes that are unacceptable, most of them, it's because they are taught from a very early age that a man is strong, a man should discipline a woman, and all of those things. And most of them, when they go through pain, one of the major things is that a man doesn't cry. If you are a man, you are not supposed to cry if you are in pain, and all of those things. And this is how they then take out their anger and their pain by abusing these defenseless women. So now they are starting to empower these men to say, we want to understand what your pain is, and we want to come up with a solution, a better solution of you dealing with pain as opposed to you killing a woman or raping a woman, or all of those things. So that's what we need to look at when we say painful behaviors come from people in pain, to say this person, what is it that made this person to react the way that they are reacting?
Wow. I feel so proud to be connected to you, Thulani. Maybe we should talk someday and put this into the school system or something, but I think this is a very amazing. And it's an honor. It's an honor that you're the person that's doing it on such a large scale, showing proof of concept. Amazing. I'll have a quick... Yes? Oh, you're welcome. I also have a quick story on the same theme, which we have somebody that's connected to the Loving World group in general who's gone through hard times recently. I can talk about the story because they're public about it and they're trying to fix things. But there was a gentleman, a man called Anthony, and his father, he managed his father's business for 20 or so years plus. And after about this 20 years, suddenly he realized there were certain illegalities taking place in this business which were wrong. And he decided to pull out of the business. He said, I don't want to be involved in this anymore. And sadly, his father, in his 80s, or quite an older gentleman, took this badly and became very aggressive and actually threatened his children and threatened this, threatened that. He became quite aggressive. And they were in a discussion once, and it got so heated that Anthony wrongly, with all the frustration and pain, hit his father, which you shouldn't do, but he did. And as a result, the father went to the police and reported his son, and his son had to spend 6 months in jail. And I spent a few days with this man on the phone, many hours before he went to jail, and somehow we bonded, and somehow I was able to help in his journey, and we fell in love. And I turned to Nomi afterwards. I said, do you think I should visit him in jail? And she was like, no brainer, off you go. So I went to jail and I visited this man, and I was in there, and first of all, he's such a good summer. We spent a lot of time talking about the pain of his father and what drove him to do that, and not to feel that anger towards his own father. He's going through that process and healing. Painful behavior comes from people in pain is a healing process, because then you understand how to fix things from it. And then the guard came along, and the guard, George was his name, I believe. He was the prison guard. And I said, yeah, how are you? Is everything okay? And I said, yeah. And I said, I have a question to you, George. How long have you been a guard in the prison? He said, 22 years. And I said, in those 22 years, how many evil people have you met? From all the inmates, how many of them were really evil? And he thought for a second. He said, oh, I've never been asked that one. He says, I think the answer is 0. I don't think I've ever met an evil person in my life. He said, look at all these inmates. It was like in the movies. We were in like a baseball room, all with the same of these tables. And by the way, our table was number 13, table 13. And look at all these inmates. And they're all talking to their families. They all want love. His words. I didn't do this loving classroom bit. They all want love, and they just made terrible mistakes in their lives and ended up in prison. But there's just mistakes. Look how lovely they are. I've never met an evil person. So it's a matter of understanding the journey, and that understanding then enables us to find a way to heal the pain and fix society. Okay, so it is now 7:57, and we had 2 other things on the agenda, but clearly we won't be able to do them. So I just wanted to say one of the things on the agenda was a program that I was talking about with Joyce today, the idea of loving classroom for the youth. We know that there are challenges in South Africa. Nikki, who has given her heart and soul and whole being to get the books raised, the 21,000 books that we need. I've never experienced such, and her process was not one donor, but let's get the people to give. And we got somewhere like 17,000 books, and we're short of about 4,000 books. And it's not just each book is £4, and it's not just a book. And we just didn't come up with the number. It was a very carefully, and I always say to Tulani, it should be 22,000 books, and whatever, it's 21,000 books. But anyway, we're short of those 4,000, and Tulani very much needs it. But I didn't want to go, especially, and Nikki said she's tried her hardest with all the donors, and they gave, and this, that, and the other. So is there any other way? And the idea came from Joyce a couple of weeks ago. Maybe the kids themselves, we can have loving classroom youth, so that the kids are caring for other kids around the world, to get them to enable them to have good relationships and to learn what it takes not to be a wife beater, etc., as Tulani pointed out. And the lovely thing about Loving Classroom is that it always ends up with projects anyway. So those kids can end up doing charitable things for Israel, for South Africa, for United Arab Emirates, for Gaza, or for the ecology, for whatever the projects come out, the projects anyway will happen, but all the kids coming together can then make it a global campaign where kids are helping kids make a beautiful world. So the idea was to get a group of kids together who could then go to their friends in schools, and they'll be the ones that raise the money for the other South African kids that don't have the books. And then somehow we'll get these kids to meet each other and come up with projects to make a beautiful world. And that's a model for all children. There's many children that have more resources than the other children that have almost nothing. And so that idea, so hopefully this week I'll be meeting with Joyce's children to discuss and brainstorm how we can get the different schools involved. And she mentioned Simone, this, that, and the other, and we'll all work, Nikki. And so it's not on the shoulders of all the donors, it's on the shoulders of our kids learning how to build a loving world youth. So that was an idea. We were going to discuss it a little bit. I'm just throwing it out there so you know that's like a project that sort of came up. And I saw that Joyce's hand has gone up.
So now, especially I'm talking personally now from a Jewish point of school and Jewish day school, I feel also when the Gaza thing launches, because we were talking about twinning, that would be a great resource for the children, like a Gaza kid to twin with a Jewish kid, or we have them speak to each other or something on Zoom, because then they see actually from their counterparts.
Wow.
And that would be great with like JPS would be a great example to do it with.
Wow.
We can try to do a manual, or I think Samantha also, I'm not sure where she is, but when she did her HESED program, what her school is. And at least that's already a few schools that you can do something with and get the kids involved. Because I think especially in Jewish schools, we learn HESED and we have to give charity. And this is a great outlet for them. So I think that's another thing to look at.
Fantastic. I think
Definitely amazing.
If it was kids in Israel, they wouldn't want to do that because that's called normalization, and they're against that idea. But if it's Jewish kids in England, that sounds like something that they may go for, and we'd have to talk it through with them. And it may take a few months before the program hasn't started yet in Gaza. It's starting in September, so it may take a while. And it's going to the newspaper. But that idea, I believe, will. But I can already talk to Muin, my friend in Gaza, about the idea, and maybe he can already get a few sort of demonstration kids to start talking. And it has to be done the right way, so that the program's not killed because you're getting but it has to be done the right way. But the fact that it's not Jews in England as opposed to Israel makes a big positive difference. Okay, we could talk a lot about more of this, and I saw Shira's smile there. I give a penny for your smile to know what you're thinking. Can we finish off with a comment from Shira?
There's too much noise in the background, but I think it's fascinating, and I think it's everything you're saying is 100% spot on. But brilliant.
Okay, pretty cool. So time's up. Love you all, and see you next week, please God. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.